Ladies, have you been wanting to make a change, but you don't feel ready? Here's the truth. Readiness is a lie. The model of confidence for women is backward, and we need to flip it. I'm Cara Moeller Poppitt, author of a new book, Big Freaking Change. After coaching thousands of women, I discovered action gives us confidence, not the other way around. If we wait to feel ready, we'll wait forever. So if you're ready to get unstuck and step into the life you've always dreamed about, visit bigfreakingchange.com right now and order your copy. Welcome to the Big Freaking Change podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of those who took bold action, embraced uncertainty, and transformed their lives without ever feeling ready. I'm your host, Cara Moeller Poppitt, author of The Big Freaking Change and the creator of the Get Unstuck Cycle of Change model. Each week, we'll sit down with remarkable individuals who have taken bold steps in their lives, personally and professionally, to make meaningful change. Whether you're seeking a career shift, personal growth, or a boost in confidence, our goal is to inspire you to stop waiting and start taking action. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Freaking Change. I'm your host, Cara Moeller Poppitt, and I'm so excited to be here with an amazing coach, an inspiring person who leads with greatness, and this is Jamion Christian. He is a leader who builds winning organizations by fostering environments that are supportive, collaborative, and fiercely competitive. Using his elite team status framework, he's helped teams championships at both the college and professional levels on two sides of the Atlantic. So I should say ciao and welcome back. Thank you so much, Jamion, for being on the podcast. I know you were in Italy coaching. Tell me about your life in the last little while.
Well, first of all, it's great to be on here with you. Anytime I get a chance to share experience with you, your energy, your positivity radiates through the room, and I'm feeling it right now. So I'm appreciative of having a chance to be on here. Hey, look, I'm just a guy who loves basketball, a guy who loves leadership. I get a chance to work with young people every single day, and I get a chance to help them become what they've always wanted to become. I'm getting a chance to do that. I'm a college basketball coach. I've been a professional basketball coach. I've won championships in college. I've won championships as a pro. I'm getting a chance every single day to sort of do the thing that I've always wanted to do and impacting people's lives. And, that's just a joy to be able to do. Currently the head coach at Bryant University in Smithfield, Rhode Island, team that's been in a championship game 3 out of the last 4 years and went to the NCAA tournament last year. It's my first few weeks on the job here. And so getting a chance to establish leadership and establish a supportive, a collaborative, and competitive environment, I'm right in the midst of it. So it's a great time for us to have this conversation.
So you're going through a big change already. And I'm assuming that every group of students and professionals that you work with have the mindset to win. And you need to foster this competitive environment and also keep it psychologically safe. Tell me about some of your framework that you use to help people stay in the game.
Yeah, number one, I start with a framework called ETS, Elite Team Status. And the first level of that is trust. And that's one of the hardest things to build on any organization or any team. And especially when you have a lot of high achievers. One thing with high achievers is most of the time you achieve because you go alone. But when a team, we have to push you together, allow you to go with other people. And so building that trust becomes really important. The trust phase of it for us, again, number one, like we have a team. I started with these guys about 2 weeks ago. I told them, number one, we don't know each other. So we have to put ourselves in position where we get to know each other. Me as the leader, I have to do a great job of making sure I'm creating activities, real genuine conversation, and I'm fostering the conversation in a way that guys can learn one another. The second thing we talk about is being all in. It's like whatever decision that we make as a team, let's just go 10 toes in. Let's go full body leap into the ocean and go and attack a goal. And, that's really hard to do. You talk about when you're being all in on something, it's having unconditional buy-in. And again, when you're a high achiever, a lot of time you've been able to have conditional level buy-in, only working at things that allow you to be the very best. And, this buy-in and being all in is really about our team and yourself moving in the same direction. So the third level we talk about is the ability to be super present in the moment and present in what's in front of us. You use the word win and, what's important now when we talk about win, that's what we sort of talk about is like connecting us to the process of what it takes to be very good. And, a lot of times people sort of get disconnected with, I want to be super competitive and I want to be the victor and hold a trophy at the end, but you don't get a chance to do that unless you focus on what's most important now, right? And so I think those are things that when we start talking about that become really important is how can we define what's important now? Because it constantly feels like it's sort of changing and it changes a bit over and over again. And so, we go there, we talk about what's most important now, and then ultimately we end up at this level of competition, at the very top of the pyramid. And it's compete, compete, compete. And that's doing things that impact the outcome on a day-to-day basis. And again, this sort of connecting you to the present moment of what's most important. So when we talk about elite team status, we're talking a lot about those kind of dynamics that we're trying to build into our day-to-day habits.
That's wonderful. I feel like I'm going to apply some of that to the dance studio world. Jamion, I want to pick your brain a little bit about you're in a big game. Let's say it's championship, you're 1 point away, and you got to get your team's mindset so focused and so collaborative and so present. What are some things that you do to really bring that mentality to the game and also in life? Like you talked about being present. I love that. That's the journey of life, is to be present and to appreciate where we are now and to be where our feet are and to not chase the next thing, but to enjoy where we are. And I can imagine in, high tense games when there's a lot at stake, their mindset is so important. So talk to me about that and how you foster a strong mindset.
So much of it is what you do on a day-to-day basis with practice and performance and your relationship with practice and performance. Everyone thinks that you want to take the game-winning shot, but the reality of it is, are you willing to miss the game-winning shot? You have to be willing to take the opportunities that are going to allow you to sort of achieve your dream. So what we're trying to do on the practice floor every day is we're trying to raise the level of competition to the highest level where the pressure is at its highest. A good friend of mine, Shaka Smart, calls them EGBs, energy-giving behaviors. And it's really about your ability to judge these energy-giving behaviors in the heightened moments. It's not just about how you operate how you handle adversity when things are bad, but it's also how you handle success when things are going well. A lot of times you learn about yourself, when people hit it big, you don't change. You just become more yourself, when you have more money in your bank account. And so we want to make sure that we're constantly looking at these behaviors that'll lead to you being your very best. And then that's the job of the leader, but really the job of everyone, hold everybody accountable to what these sort of behaviors look like. So, one of the things that we try to do on a day-to-day basis is just be really clear, like, what is a game-changing behavior? What does that look like, one way or the other? The beautiful thing about sport is like once I can identify an energy-given behavior to our team, we start to recognize those negative behaviors in other teams. And that sort of feeds into the moment of, when we need to go and attack at full force when they're sort of about to break or about to crack. And so, I think number one, acknowledging what those behaviors are. Behavior is an interesting thing because a behavior leads you into what you're thinking. And then that's going to lead into how you're sort of reacting. And so like yourself, like when you're looking at a group, you can see sort of things that are allowing the group to move forward or to take a step back. And then it really comes about, everyone in the group learning how to hold each other accountable to those things. So I was saying the pressurized moment, it really starts sort of there. The other thing is, who are we looking to attract? When I'm going out and I'm recruiting players for me, I'm looking for players who have constantly been a little bit better in every situation than that's been in front of them. We call those HPIs. You get a lot of abbreviations. We call those high potential individuals. And a high potential individual is a person that walks in the door and automatically makes your organization better. We always use this analogy like, when you start at McDonald's, the first job you have is maybe cleaning the floors. Well, that person, if you're HPI, suddenly the floors are cleaner. So suddenly the place smells a little bit better. The bathrooms are cleaner. People feel more comfortable. They spend more time in the store because it's comfortable. It smells well. So they maybe buy one more item. So that person's just sweeping the floor because they're a high potential individual and they're doing everything at the highest level. Suddenly, people are spending more time there. Secondly, they get a chance to get promoted. They get promoted to the fries, right? And so now the fries at McDonald's are really important. They're putting the right amount of salt on the fries, or they're listening to the details of it. So you sell more fries. Eventually this HPI, this high potential individual, rises to become the manager of the McDonald's. And suddenly the McDonald's is selling more than it had in 20 years. It's all because every step of that level, this person's learned to be an HPI. So we're constantly looking for high potential individuals. Those are people that come in, make your organization better by having an extreme appreciation for detail and having a great work ethic. And so, when you kind of start to combine this force together with the environment we're talking about being supportive, collaborative, and competitive, those people for us have really taken off. I think we've had over 30 players play overseas. We've had 4 NBA players play for us. And so, we've been able to have this beautiful mix of players and personality, and they've been able to achieve.
That's incredible. You said personality, and I want to pick your brain a little bit on that. In any work environment, life environment, where we're working with different people with different personalities, how do you foster the best in everybody so that you can be collaborative, right? When there are really strong personalities or there's conflict, what are some tools that you use to really bring the best out of everyone?
Yeah, number one, I'm using a ton of assessment. I think assessment allows you to understand how to work with people better, how to understand them. Like if you really buy into the world of assessment, and it just gives you little personality hacks that allow you to really work with someone. I had a player who was a high intensity, high focus guy, and we take an assessment, and they just talked about how much he cared about winning. And so one of the phrases I would adapt to him anytime I was going to bring a conversation to him, that could have gone one or the other. I would say, this is going to help our team win if, and it was almost like a hack. If I label it like that, this is going to help our team win. If you do this, if this happens, whatever, he would automatically click into it because he cared about winning so much. And so I think like these assessments, if you really dive into it, can really give you some framework of how to label a conversation to help someone. Number two, maybe this should be number one, is I think the world is better when people can be themselves. I mean, I think that's what changes the world. And I think that's what makes the US and Canada and some of these countries some of the best in the world, is that, you can come as you are and you can find a way to be the very best. I really push against limiting environments that limit personal behavior. I think the ability of a group to learn one another is what makes it so unique and makes it so much better. On our team this year, we're gonna have guys from Russia, we're gonna have guys from France, we're gonna have guys from Australia. We got a player from Africa. Like we've got this incredible mix of player from around the world. And I learned from being overseas like how powerful that is. This mixing of ideas and this mixing of culture, when facilitated the right way, allows everybody in the locker room to kind of learn something a little bit differently. So I think those are really important. And then if I had a third thing, I just think it's important to understand, to make sure the group understands and knows we are so much stronger when we have all these voices and people working together. Understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are and bringing those to the table and really being able to discuss them. We do a lot of group leadership. One thing I do is I really believe in the group leading one another. So we do a lot of group leadership. We do a lot of seminars within our program where we bring people in to speak to them. I just want to grow the individual leadership within the group. And great leadership starts with understanding others and having tremendous empathy for others. When you see that in good organizations and teams, you're really hard to beat. When you really have a full understanding, good and bad, of how people operate and what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Jamion, talk to me a little bit about your biggest freaking change that you had to make, and did you feel ready?
Well, I was put on forced sabbatical. I was a head coach at Mount St. Mary's for 6 years. I was a head coach at Siena for 1 year, where we had the biggest turnaround in the college basketball. And then I became the head coach at 36 or 37 at George Washington, 9 and 10. So that's 10 years in a row of being a head coach and being in the right position. I was ESPN top 40 head coach in the country. Supposed to be one of these guys that was climbing super rapidly. There has been a lot of guys that have been in the NCAA tournament 2 times before the age of 35. So we were sort of,
Wow.
we were sort of going on this rocket ship one direction. And, we had 3 years at GW that just weren't good enough. And so the big freaking change came, when you get called into your boss's office and HR sitting in the corner there, and, she's explaining to you how your buyout works, and one of those moments that you never think is going to happen. And then you have to go home and sit with your wife and tell her, hey, we're going to, I told her we were fired, and I reframed it later on to being put on sabbatical because I felt like, the big freaking change for me was going to really help me, and I remember, having one day where I kind of sulked and tried to figure it out. And then that next day I just said, every day moving forward, I'm going to have an opportunity to get better and I'm going to keep learning. And so I started writing. I took the class with a bunch of great friends and good people, where I started learning how to speak better and how to connect better and maybe do a little bit of acting, And so I took that class. I took a couple classes at Penn on leadership and working as a collaborative group. And I started doing a podcast. And I just said, this big freaking change for me was all about, finding the way that I could continue to give the best Jamion Christian to the world and learning different ways to be able to do that. And, from there, I had a year off where I got a chance to really explore the world a little bit and do some different things. And then that led me to 2 years in Italy. And, we were one of the most dominant teams in Italian basketball for 2 straight seasons, with a first time American head coach who had never been in Italy before, didn't speak the language, so to be able to do that was really a blessing. I think on the other side of the change, when you learn it's really great stuff ahead.
It's so critical that when we're in the change, we can feel so sad. We can have all of our emotions. And I love that the next day you like shifted into motion of like, let's use this as an opportunity to become better. And now you're on the other side of change. You can look back and say that it was a blessing. But so often when we're in the midst of the storm or we're in the midst of the change, it's really hard to have that perspective. Talk to me a little bit about how you keep perspective when things are changing, on the court and in life.
Yeah, I think it's perspective is an incredible strength, and sadly, we sort of gain perspective as we get older, and it kind of looks like wisdom. It looks like and smells like
Yeah.
wisdom, right?
Yeah.
But to gain wisdom, you have to go through something. You have to learn something to be able to share it. That's why we can sit on the porch with our grandparents and they can tell us all about life, and because they've been all the way through it before they've been that journey. One of the things, when you talk about perspective, and I actually did this that year I was out. I think it's really easy to look at the scoreboard like, hey, I'm 40 years old, I should be here, my classmates are doing this. Comparison is a thief of joy. And so number one, like anytime you catch yourself in a moment of comparison, it's just like, you're running a different race and appreciate the race that you're running. So we're in a game, like we basically use so many metrics. I mean, and one thing about being in this game of basketball, we use so much data to explain what's happening in front of us, and so we might use a stat like deflections. Deflections, if I can knock the ball away. Well, that just speaks about our activity. That just speaks about how hard we're playing. And so if we can look at, if we have 5 key stats that we're looking at, how often we get the ball in the paint, how many times we deflect it, how many offensive rebounds we get, I can give a bunch of them. But just being able to really identify those things, and so I say if I was personal and I wasn't in sports, I would say, hey, like I want to write 20 days in a row. Just give myself some small goal to just see what I'm doing for 20 straight days. Hey, I want to be a writer. I believe I can write a book. Well, then I need to really get comfortable in writing. And so I'm going to do that. If it's working out, it's like, hey, I'm going to get up every day at 6 a.m. and then don't negotiate with yourself. You're laying there in bed at 5:50. You're thinking, do I want to get up? Do I want to do this? Don't negotiate with yourself. You do what you say you're going to do. Trust what you're going to be able to do, and watch how that change sort of happens. And I think when you're in the midst of it, it's that ability to keep that perspective. That a lot of times it's just one small step at a time that's going to eventually get you there. Instead of looking for the biggest step, take the small step, appreciate the small step, and then applaud yourself. Like I tell guys when we're working out, like last week you were here, this week you're here, applaud yourself. So many times, like I will make a bad play and they'll be internally arguing with themselves and you can see it. And then when they make a good play, they don't celebrate themselves. Like we got to celebrate yourself in this world. There's so many people that are trying to be where you are. There's so many people that want the opportunity that you have. Heck, we want the opportunity that we have. So when you get there, then celebrate it like crazy. Enjoy it, celebrate it, bring others with you to celebrate the little things. I think as you start to do that, you start to learn to celebrate yourself. Your internal brain just starts to rise to a certain level that gives you the confidence to keep trying to it and trying different things. I think that's just so important in whatever walk of life you're in, to celebrate yourself, because if you can't celebrate yourself, who can?
Oh, yes, you are preaching. I love the idea of don't negotiate with yourself and then also celebrate your wins. I talk about this in the book, is that so often we are critical of ourselves and we look for all of the things that are going wrong and we don't take moments to really sit in the things that are going right and celebrating ourselves, celebrating the wins, because our brain starts to look for more opportunities to win. So it's not just, it's the science, right? And it's the behavior and it's up leveling ourselves for ourselves, right? And not having external motivation, but really that internal moments to go, okay, I did this. This is amazing. What's next? And to bring people with you is so critical because it also encourages them to step out to be their best selves. And I think so often we think about winning as an individual moment or an individual opportunity or an individual time to shine, but it's so much richer when we're with other people and we praise them. So I love that that's part of your philosophy. Talk to me about when you're in moments of intensity, how do you keep your cool? Because you're the head coach, you're driving huge results, you've connected, you've created this beautiful energy with trust, your teammates are working well, and the coach's energy really sets the vibe of the team. So talk to me about what you do to kind of maintain your energy in high intensity.
Yeah, well, number one, I love those kind of moments. I mean, for me, those are the most fun moments. I mean, last year we were in the playoffs. We went 9-1 in the playoffs to win the highest winning percentage in the history of Italian A2 playoffs. All this stuff, like
Wow.
I like love it, but I like love it. I'm like living for it at the highest level and like just enjoying the opportunity to go and do that. Like these opportunities where you either win or you go home, I think they're the most fun opportunities there is. I mean, it's just a direct measure of how good you are or how bad you are. Right. And so I'm looking for those opportunities that are right in front of me. But when you talk about just staying calm, it's all about the preparation. I mean, I'm putting 18 hours in for every game I'm going to watch. There's not going to be a scenario or a situation that's going to present itself out there that I haven't prepared for, I haven't thought through. The preparation for that gives me a lot of trust in myself and trust in our staff that we're going to be able to make the right decision. And at the end of the day, you can't control everything. And so a lot of it is like recognizing what are the things that I can control and what are the things that I can't control. The reality of it is I can't control if the guys make all their shots, but I can control trying to put them in the right position to do so. Right. And so I'm going to focus on my ability to try to put them in the right position to do so. And my decision making does determine the outcome of the game because my job is to organize everybody, but also to make sure that everybody's playing fast, hard, and aggressive and smart. And so, like, if I can take pressure off of them some way, then that really matters. So, when you talk about being in the moment, I always ask before the game, I ask God to give me the ability to say what needs to be said and to do what needs to be done and to be the man that they need me to be. And so in terms of that leadership, it's not about me. It's about being what they need me to be in those moments. And whether or not I need to act like we have a problem or whether or not I need to act like we need to calm down, whatever that is, it's just trying to be enough in the environment to be what they need me to be so we can respond.
That's great wisdom right there, right? That is the wisdom because sometimes I think even for myself as I put so much pressure on myself, but it's like, it's not about me. It's here to be an instrument for other people to rise and become their best. And sometimes just channeling and understanding your vision and your purpose is so, so important and that you're here to serve other people. I think the greatest leaders, no matter if we're talking sports or business or life, are the ones that are with the mentality that they're here to serve others, because I think that's where greatness begins. That's where greatness evolves and we can all rise up, which is what I'm all about. I love that you talked about it's the preparation that gets you to the results. And I talk about this idea of readiness, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So my main message is that readiness is not a state of being, but it's a feeling that comes after you take action. Now, what I'm saying is you can prepare for sure. Preparation is required, but this feeling that you're waiting to feel ready to make the best shot or apply for the job or leave countries, whatever it is, it doesn't exist. Talk to me about your perspective on preparation versus readiness.
Well, first I say number one, you're always going to work to be prepared, but you're never going to be 100% prepared.
Yeah.
I remember I was leaving. I worked at Bucknell for 2 years, and I was driving south with the hitch on the back of the car and everything, and I get a flat tire. And at the time I was leaving, I didn't know what my next opportunity was. I mean, so you imagine I have my whole life in the hitch
Yeah.
behind me. I'm driving south. I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. I don't know what job opportunity I'm going to have. And I get a flat tire, and I'm like, okay, now I have to figure this out. And I go into the gas station, and they have all these postcards that are there, and there's one postcard that's left, and the postcard reads, "Leap and let the net appear." And I was like, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm a little pissed off because I'm waiting for the tow truck to come or whatever, and I see this card again, "Leap and let the net appear," and I've tried to really live by that, really key decisions in my life. And I think I'm ready. Like, I think the way I talk about being ready isn't about like, I've done this checklist of things and now I'm in the right position to do this. It's, I've lived a life. And so my readiness is having the ability to figure it out. Like when a doctor goes in to do surgery, they have a strong idea of what they need to do, but they don't know 100% of what they need to do. And there maybe something that presents itself that they've got to figure it out. So they're going to trust their experience, they're going to trust their training, and they're going to trust their instincts on what they need to do best. So many of these opportunities that we're going to take, it's not going to be a checklist. We're going to get there, and there's going to be a situation that wasn't in the textbook. There's going to be a situation that we're not going to have time to talk to someone else about. And so a part of my readiness, honestly, is that I said, look, I have the ability to figure it out. And so let's just keep trying to figure things out with the experience and the lessons that we have before us. That's where all that preparation sort of helps you be as prepared as possible. When you think about strategy, if I can be prepared and know exactly what the coach is not willing to do, right? Like he's not willing to play zone, he's not willing to press. Well, that gives me an incredible strategy on what I can do to go and attack and change the moment and change momentum. And so the preparation, gives you, it kind of puts you in a box of the things that you want to be able to achieve. And it gives you a pathway how you can go and achieve those things, but you never know all of it. And so I
Yes.
encourage people to leap and put the work in and let the net appear.
Oh, that's good. I wrote that sucker down for myself to remember, right? Let's talk about that. Okay, so let's pretend that someone's wanting to make a big change in their life. Maybe they're moving countries, changing jobs, changing relationships, whatever their big change is, and they're waiting to feel ready. So we understand that you can prepare, but you're not going to feel fully ready. How do you get your people and your teammates and the people in your lives to leap bigger than they think is possible? Because I think sometimes we play in our comfort zones and we think we can leap this far. And as a coach and a person who's going to have the strategy and looking at all these factors, you see people's potential greater than they see it in themselves. And I think confidence is the result of taking action before you feel ready. So we are developing confidence in people, but talk to me about how you get them to leap bigger than they think is possible.
Well, I think, I encounter two types of people, because I work with young people. I encounter people who are thinking too low, like, hey, I just want to stay comfortable. And then I heard people that are thinking, I only want to be an NBA player. So there's really no one that's ever in the middle. They're either one or the other. And so it's like trying to build out strategies that work on a group setting that both sides can appreciate, and we can bring both closer to the middle without hurting anybody's dream and still believing in them. And so I do inherit some players that don't, like, I had a kid named Jamison Bowd who actually plays for the Toronto Raptors now. And I remember working with him at GW, and I was there with him for about a week or two. And he's 6'9", shoots the ball really well. And I remember just looking at him, watching him shoot the ball, and how quick he was mentally. And I just thought, like, man, there's not a lot of guys built like you. Number one, if you're going to be an NBA player, you need to be 6'5.5" or bigger. You need to be able to shoot the ball a certain range. All the details that it takes to be successful at a job. But he had all those things, but he didn't know he had all those things. I love these type of people, and so I remember, bringing him into the office, and we're just kind of talking. He goes, yeah, it'd be great, I think, if I had a chance to maybe play a little bit after college, go to grad school, whatever. And I just said, I think you can go to grad school and do all those things, but I think if we do this right, you're going to be an NBA player. And he kind of looked up and he was like, really, you think that? And now he is an NBA player. So it's pretty cool. So what's really cool is, he was able then, he's a super smart guy, incredible, but he was able then to dive into a process. So I said, what we're going to do is we're going to build out a strategy of work that we're going to do on a day-to-day basis. Every day we're going to work on these certain tactics to improve, to sharpen these things. And then 6 months from now, we're going to readjust what those things are. So if you get better at these things, we're going to readjust, and just constantly trying to find ways to get better at things at a smaller level that will eventually become a big level. And so that became really our focus. It's like, it might be shoot off the dribble. It might be, shoot off the catch, whatever it was. And I think it's important that each of us dissects, what am I good at? Because we're going to win in life with our wins. We're not going to win with our losses. We're going to win with our wins. The things that we do best, we're going to win with. So if I can be 80-20, right? 80% of what the output is going to come from 20% of the workforce, right? But we do that personally with our players. So we tell them, like, you're a great shooter, you're great at this. If you can be in the top 4 in our group in these categories, you're gonna be able to turn that. And so we really focus on that with him, instead of saying, hey, you need to work on all your weaknesses. The weaknesses are going to keep coming. Let's push our strengths to the highest level, at the same time spending 20% of our workout time on our weaknesses. So our strengths are getting better, our weaknesses are getting better slowly, but they're getting there. And credit to him, he just bought into a process of what it looked like to get better.
Well, that's so profound, right? And it's so important that we acknowledge our weaknesses, but we focus on our strengths. That's how we're going to get the biggest leap. That's how we're going to push our limits and become the best version of ourselves. In the dance studio world, I tell my dancers, because we do group competitions where they're teammates and they're competing as a group, and then they have solos and duets. And I always say, you are competing against the best version of yourself. And your classmates and other people are going to be beside you, but you need to step into your power and figure out what's in your control. And if you do that, then you're going to shine and you're going to have that sense of accomplishment, which leads to confidence. In life and in basketball, how do you allow your teammates, so you recognize their skill sets before they maybe realize them themselves and they develop their confidence? How else do you develop confidence in your people?
Well, I think first of all, talking about what you do well, I mean, I think we all gain confidence in what we do well, and so just the simple focus on that is
Yeah.
different than what most people, most trainers that they're going to, or people they're working with, they're really working on only on their weaknesses, right? So I think just the approach of, let's list out the things that you do well. One of the most amazing things is, I will start the meeting with, all right, tell me who you are as a player. What do you do well? And I might have 6 things. They might give me 5 of the 6. I mean, what you do well. That's the trick of it, is that people naturally know what they do well. Very few times are they really disconnected with it. But the world is trying to tell you, to focus on the things that you don't do well. And so I think that's the first part of it, is just that acknowledgement. Secondly, I do think the plan for it is important. Like everyone here, you get on an airplane and you're comfortable you're going to get to your destination because it says check-in is this time, you're boarding at this time, you're getting like there's these little checklist things that happen. That's a plan for your travel. So when you get to the airport, you feel comfortable because there's a plan for your travel. I want to give our players a plan for their development, and I would do the same thing in the workforce. Give them a plan for where you want them to get to and show them how to get there. The players feel super comfortable. And this doesn't happen a ton in college basketball. It's starting to kind of happen more in professional basketball, but I want to give you a plan. Like this is where, we want to check in 6 weeks. We're on these 3 skills. And we want to see where he does in 6 months, and we'll keep working on that. And so the way I describe it is, we start with a primary skill, the thing you do very best. We want to build a complement off of your primary skill, right? So if I go right really strong, then I need to figure out how to go left, right? And so we want a primary, a complement, and then we usually do 2 complements off of that. That's a small framework for how you can improve. And then we have one larger improvement goal. And so we meet with our players actually next week on this part of it. We'll keep adjusting this as the weeks go on. We'll actually include the drill work that we're going to do to improve in the improvement section. We'll include the drill work we're going to do and how to keep them getting better in their primary section, where I think is important. But again, I think the plan becomes important to it. And then third is just the follow up. If we build the plan out, but then we don't follow up on as the third step, they'll just say, oh, this wasn't a real thing. And so I think by putting all 3 of those steps together, I think the acknowledgement, the building out the plan, and then the acknowledgement of what you need to do at the end there becomes super important. The follow up becomes super important. If you put those 3 things together, it's really hard for a high achieving person or even a person who's mid achieving to not improve, because you're just making that a focal point of their development, their time.
Jamion, did you always know that you would kind of go into this career path?
I didn't. My parents are both teachers. They both taught for over 35 years. My dad's getting close to almost 50 years of teaching.
Wow.
So I always say, like, our dinner conversations were so different because we never talked about me and my brother. My brother works for the Boston Celtics. I coach college basketball. We never talked about what we were doing. We only listened to our parents talk about their students and how they were trying to change their lives. And that was like such a focal point of our life. And they didn't come home and talk about themselves. My mom and dad didn't come home and complain about their bosses or the school system. They legitimately came home and talked about their students. Like a life really connected to the embodiment of other people being their very best. So I would say that I didn't know I'd become a coach, but I think I would have always been in a setting where I would want to help people. And that's something that's very important to me.
Yes. Well, you do it very well. Like, this conversation's very inspiring. I think, I have 2 boys that love playing basketball, so I'm going to let them listen to this episode because they'll think that's pretty cool. I would love to kind of shift our conversation now to courage. I believe that people don't need more confidence in life to step out. I believe they need courage. So when we're talking about basketball or life, we got to flex our courage muscle, and it's something that we got to do daily. I believe it's just like our mindset. It's not something that you can do once and you're done. It's something that you have to invest in daily. Just like going to the gym, you don't work out once and you're in shape for life. And the mindset is very similar, and the courage muscle is very similar. Talk to me about how you define courage and how you see courage in other people.
Yeah. To me, courage is just doing the right thing in the right moment. And I think I know it sounds pretty simple, but it's one of the harder things to do. Whether it's opening a door for someone that's behind you or saying good morning, or you're having a bad day, but you show up to work knowing that your energy is important and that you want to bring the energy right for the people around you. I think we can find courage in so many different ways. And I think it's so important to recognize it as courage, because there's definitely a feeling that you're going to feel, when you're in a moment and maybe something is happening on the bus beside you that you don't agree with. There's a feeling that we all feel because we recognize what is right, but we also recognize what is happening. And so the courage, that feeling to get through that feeling to just do what is right in that moment becomes very important. Establishing what is right and what is wrong in the moment, that can kind of switch depending on the safety level of certain situations. But I think when you can evaluate that, I think that becomes very important. I love the idea of the courage muscle. I'm going to take that back with our group, like having the courage. I'm going to use that word all week next week, having the courage to do what is right in this moment. And I think that's really hard for people to learn, because it's really easy to just kind of sit back and hope that things will change on their own. But nothing changes on its own. Things change because people have a passion for changing it, have a passion for making it better. And so, like you said, flexing that muscle, I think, is really important. And I think as you get used to doing it, I'm a head coach, so I'm always constantly holding these guys accountable. That feeling starts to go away. and you just start to recognize this is right, this is wrong, and we need to step in here and we need help.
Yeah. It's simple and yet it's hard, right? And it's a process of trusting yourself, I think, and listening to that feeling and then acting in accordance to it. Jamion, this has been a very inspiring conversation. So thank you for sharing your brilliance, your strategy, your mindset, how you lead people, and you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And that's a very, unique gift and rare blessing to the world. So continue doing the things that you're doing. I know you are designed for greatness. You have great energy, great perspective, you have wisdom, and I wish you all the best. Jamion, tell me how our listeners can find out more about what you're up to and stay connected to you.
Yeah, well, I'm the head coach at Bryant University men's basketball. So if you Google anything there, or you put in, my mom gave me a great first name, Jamion. There's not a lot of those in the
Yeah,
world,
it is a great one.
Jamion. So Jamion Christian, if you Google that in there. But I'm available on Instagram. I'm really easy to find. Instagram, Twitter, you can find me anywhere there. But again, Kara, I appreciate you taking the time. I always loved your energy, and I appreciate our ability to still connect. And no one is rooting for you harder for big freaking change than me right here.
Oh, I thank you so much. And listeners, as you go on with your day, I want you to take the wisdom from this conversation. What is the next small step? Can you leap larger than you think is possible, knowing that a net will be there? Can you flex your courage muscle? Can you prepare for greatness so when you are stepping out, you can trust yourself and you can make your biggest freaking change? Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Bye for now. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would be so grateful if you could share it with someone else that could benefit from it. Let's remember to change our relationship to change itself and take aligned action. If we want to make meaningful changes in our lives, we need to embrace stepping into the next version of ourselves in the process. Remember, stop waiting to feel ready and start taking action today.